A great example of how I used my neurodivergency to my advantage was when I was a kid. I just like had no concept of an ego. Like everything was just because it felt good. It was cool. It made me happy. It was expressive. The difference now is with ADHD and stuff, we're very, very sensitive, especially when we get rejected or turned down and stuff. That happening all throughout school and being this outcast and then curating myself to fit in and all that stuff, like it shifted like how I create, how I go about life. And at the moment, I'm trying to reconnect with that inner child. Like if nobody else was on this earth, like what would I do? And try to feed into that because like that's my superpower and I've like neglected it.
Yeah, so it's been a bit happening, huh, in life
Yeah.
since we last spoke.
Always. I think September is always the craziest month of the year for me.
You find it to be that
Yeah.
way. Why
Yeah.
September? What are you thinking about September?
I don't know. I feel like it's just coming out of winter. It's like the start of spring. My birthday is October.
October what?
October 8th. So.
Same.
What?
No way. Yeah.
Are you serious?
For real.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You're a Libra. Yes. I have a little like Libra tattoo here.
Cool. Yes.
But oh my God, a fellow Libra. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's
happy
like-
birthday for like in 2
Well, yeah, and you
weeks.
too.
Yeah,
And
thank
too.
you.
Oh, a good bit older. this is my 41st.
Same.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, October 8th. Yeah, no, actually, that's a good point. I guess that I never really thought about it, but around spring is when things come into spring.
Yeah, everything like events start happening again. People are a little bit happier because like, they can see summer and like the winter's going away.
Yeah, and shaking
Least
off
for
the
me.
cobwebs
Yeah.
as well. New
Yeah.
beginnings. That's what
Yeah.
it is, isn't it? I never really thought of that. Probably I should have. It's been many trips around the sun and I hadn't once considered what spring means metaphorically and also literally. And you got a single dropping next week.
Mm-hmm.
Is this an evolution in your work? Is there what are you bringing to the table now that is different, that is aligned with this new beginnings?
Good question. I think a new sound, like a more refined sound of Remedy. I think for the past couple of years, almost like my whole career, I've really like wanted to prove myself and be a genre chameleon and like do everything because I felt like I had a bit of a late start. So if people listen to my discography, there's like just so many sounds. I feel like it's like what sound even is Remedy. And I'm such a big lover of R&B and soul. So I really wanted to start creating stuff I actually would listen to, which is this project I've been working on. And the first single coming out, High as Hell in the Lobby, is kind of the song that encapsulates that whole era. I wanted to like leave that song for last, but I thought it was a really nice like introduction into the world of like what I'm gonna be talking about and singing with. It's emotional. It is, still about toxic shit and picking all the wrong men, which is most of my music. But I produced that song and I'm very self-conscious as a producer, so it was really fun to like actually like trust myself. And this song as well, it started off as a freestyle and I always am trying to be so intricate lyrically. And I was just like talking about how I actually felt for the first time in a while, which was freeing. And it makes singing it so much more important to me, and the connection stronger, which is good.
Is that something that you've been finding it, I guess, like in your career, trying to find that authenticity? Is that something that has been a challenge? That something that you had to kind of like have to search for, or was it something that just kind of just came more natural?
I think it came natural subconsciously, and I only realized that I was being kind of authentic recently. Kind of just like people telling me, you know, that that was my brand, and that I was like unapologetically me, and I was like, yeah, that tracks. Like I don't really censor myself, but I think I really, being in the industry, you don't even mean to curate yourself, and you do. And I found like the past couple years, a lot of like imposter syndrome with like curating authenticity to like be a part of a brand. And this project, I really just like allowed myself to be me, which was really cool.
Because this is one thing that I'm trying to really understand with artists, especially now, because like having a public profile is integral, especially with musicians. And so when you have this personal brand and you who you are personally, it quite often they're not aligned, and that in itself, and I guess that's what I was trying to get at. It's like when you're trying to identify and create this personal brand, how much of it is something that you have to curate versus something that's like, fuck, it's just too hard to try to create something that's inauthentic. It's just easier to not even consider it a personal brand and just do you, right? And then just let that flourish, and then whatever it is whatever it
Yeah.
is.
I think that's how I started. Just like there was no what are people going to think, everything. It was just all me. And only until I started getting some traction or people noticing me did I start curating it, which was a weird feeling because I had never done that before. And I think it's a thing that a lot of artists deal with, like battle with, is really pushing for like being true to yourself. And that's a lot of the time what art is, but then also trying to like maintain a business.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so hard because I'm like, oh, I want to say this, but I'm like, that's a bit problematic. I should, thinking in this like time where all like artists are also business owners, it really like, I feel like shifts what you put out into the world, at least in my case.
Yeah, you're right. I find that it's a dangerous line to try to tread without wanting to cross it. Right? Like I feel as though that you're doing a disservice to yourself if you don't try to toe that line a little bit at a time. And when you're trying to appeal to a certain group of people by not speaking your truths, then are they really the people that you want to align yourself with?
Exactly.
As well?
And that's the push and pull,
Yeah.
and I think it's just like a balancing act because it's hard because you also want to have a longevity in a business and everything. And sometimes being honest, you're like, okay, the honesty could like be really good now, but how is it going to track in like 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. No.
And I've had that happen, and I'm like looking back at like interviews or things I did like 5 years ago. I'm like, oh girl, just shut up.
But that's part of it. That's the process, right? Like we're gonna go grow and we're gonna learn, and that's one of the things that like I find to be a bit icky with social media is that they're timestamps, but it doesn't really show the growth. Well, it does show the growth, but we don't like to accept it and look at it as a growth of a person. We would like to just be like, 10 years ago, this is the opinion you held, and you're held to that. It's like,
Yeah.
well, no, we've got to give each other that space to learn and to grow and to develop and to evolve. And as an artist, that's an integral part, right? Like you're taking so much inspiration from everything around you, and especially in the music industry, as things shift real quick.
Yeah.
As well, like you yourself are going to be evolving, and even just recently, you've been sharing a lot more about yourself, being more open about the emotional and mental challenges that you've had that are really personal to you, and it just gives greater context to your work.
It's freeing too, I think, because putting on a facade never feels good.
No.
You feel like you're lying, and I can't lie. I'm a horrible liar. So, and I think I've never like been dishonest, but you know, you get scared to admit things, that are personal to yourself and everything. But it's just been so nice kind of having this fan base and this like collective family that don't just accept me for me, but like accept all of us for who we are, and allow the space for me to like talk about my mental health and talk about my disability, and really push that for my branding, because I really want to do stuff for like other people that struggle with the things that I struggle with. And it's great being with, my booking agencies, To Be Access, and they specialize with supporting artists with disability. And it's just nice to like not have to pretend to be able-bodied in this industry where like that's all people really want from you, because everything is like such a quick turnaround and stuff. And I've definitely had my share of like ableism and shitty experiences, but I think I've been really honored with the kindness that I've been met with, especially with Tibby, and the accessibility they give me, not just for my disability, but for my mental health.
So, like, we only understand the world just through the way we experience it, right? And, you have your own personal journey. You do.
She is just vibing.
Like, you see the world through your lens, and you go through the industry, parlay through the music industry, as only you can do. When you say with your mental health, the disabilities, I don't even know. I don't even want to call them disabilities, because it's almost like you could just turn it around and it could be a superpower at the same time, right? Like you could use it in your favor. As someone who is trying to understand and see the world through other lenses, through your experiences, what is unique to you that we don't understand?
Well, I think what makes me different and unique is just simply like being me. Like no one's like me, and that's why it's so important to have that authenticity. And like I've tried to be other people in my life and suck at it because it's not natural. And I think disability has a long way to go with how it's understood, especially with invisible disability and people only seeing disability as something very visual. And I really want to help educate people about chronic illness and like how it can manifest, like how trauma can affect your body and give you these lifelong things because of just how interconnected everything is. Your brain and your heart and your body and your muscles, like they're not separate things. Like they're all chatting to each other.
Yeah, I believe that. Strictly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it's just, and also with like neurodivergency and the stereotypes with that as well, I think there's just so much education that I feel like is vital for people to receive and understand on like a base level from a young age. Because like, for example, I have ADHD and I have autism, and my whole like childhood, everyone was like, something's not right. Like she's not getting it. I would have these like explosive breakdowns as a child, and there would be no reason behind them. I would just be overstimulated. Or, a teacher asks me a question and I'm going off on a tangent, very much like this, because my brain just is interpreting that information differently.
Just sorry, I want to interrupt. Tangents are perfectly fine here. If I'm going to say something, it's just to cast it out and you just run with it, all right?
I love it.
Yeah.
Good. I had so many clear traits of being neurodivergent as a child, and I only got diagnosed when I was like 16, 17, and I was in like the mental health system since I was 7. And because of the definition of how like autism might show, they were like, well, you can talk to people fine, you know, like you can socialize fine, so you couldn't have autism. And it's called a spectrum for a reason. And so much of the time, women and girls mirror people to not get in trouble because they're scared they want to be good. You know, we're taught from such a young age that like we have to be good and behave and do the right thing. And I want to help other people have an easier experience with their neurodivergency, with understanding, you know, if their child has it and like how to navigate that, because I just really get it, you know, like if I wasn't doing music, I'd love to do psychology. And I really want to make that a part of my brand. And it kind of just happened naturally through how I kind of write and what I talk about in my music. But like being neurodivergent is a superpower, but it seems like a disadvantage because this world is made for neurotypical people.
I get you. I see that. I think
You know?
I think that's what I was getting at when I was saying that. Like, I don't really want to call it a disability, but I guess like in the way that you explain it, that just in the structures that we have at the moment, we're not really catering to help support or to help amplify, you know, this neurodivergent. But with the way that you create, how have you then used what you have to your advantage?
I think a great example of how I used my neurodivergency to my advantage was when I was a kid. And I just like had no concept of an ego. Like everything was just because it felt good. It was cool. It made me happy. It was expressive. And there was just, you know, the world was my oyster. You know, every single thing I looked at, I was like seeing it from a different perspective of most, and how to create that into something cool. Whether that was a song or a dance or like an outfit. I remember constantly like getting my clothes and like turning them inside out to like invent them in some way as like a 6-year-old. And my mom would always dress me and I'd be like, no. And then as like a 3-year-old, and then I'd, you know, pull everything down and create a fit and be like, I'm a bad bitch.
So it was just like you just didn't have labels. You didn't have limitations to things. It was
Not
just
at
you
all.
just saw it for what it was, and it was either for you or not.
It was all for me. And I think the difference now is, you know, with ADHD and stuff, you know, there's like, I think it's RSD or something, where like rejection, I'm going to say it so wrong. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
But basically, we're very, very sensitive, especially when we get rejected or turned down and stuff. And, you know, that happening all throughout school and being in this outcast and then curating myself to fit in and all that stuff, like created that ego, like made that disconnect with like seeing that my brain I was the problem. And then it shifted like how I create, you know, how I go about life. And at the moment, I'm trying to reconnect with that inner child and be like, fuck the ego, fuck what people think. Like, this is my life. Like, if nobody else was on this earth, like, what would I do? And try to feed into that, because like that's my superpower, and I've like neglected it in a way. And I've let like the negativities kind of shine through for a bit too long. And that's so common. Like, yeah, like, you know, being neurodivergent is like super cool. We think of things differently and look at the world through this incredible lens, but it does come with like having intense overstimulation and like these breakdowns where you're like, I don't even know what I'm like screaming and crying about, but my body just feels like horrible to be in. Not being able to understand people, information, panic attacks from socializing, like textures. Like I could wear like a wool jumper and I'm gonna have like the worst month of my life. You know, like it's just like, it's a whole mixed bag. But with the education of like understanding yourself and being able to like emotionally intellectualize how and just process like how your body's feeling, how to navigate those things. You know, like I was labeled as having like clinical depression when I was younger, and I'm sure I had some depression, but it was like my neurodivergency manifesting really negatively. But they didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I was getting all this treatment for depression and it wasn't working. And it was just because I did not know how to deal with my autism.
I'm just here sitting and thinking about what you were saying about how that connection, and if you were to be overstimulated, it'll react. You would internally react in a way that may or may not be favorable. So for you, it was a matter of then just recognizing it for what it was and not really combating it, right? Because a lot of when you were growing up, I suppose that you were being told to combat that, right? But now it's just more of a just accept it, harness it, use it, and or leave it.
Yeah. It's, you know, like I think a great example is the other day, like my mom is my bestie. She's always been there for me. I don't think I would have survived my teenage years without her. She's a lover. And we're super communicative, you know, about what we need. And so the other day, instead of, you know, I was having a tough day with like some personal stuff. And instead of trying to pretend to be normal and fine and then get just too triggered, too overstimulated, have this massive breakdown and just get super angry, I was like, hey, like, I'm having a shit day. Like, please, like, I can't deal with physical contact today or overstimulate me. So don't feel like I'm being cold to you. If I'm super talkative, like, you know, let's chat. If I pull away, just know I want to go nonverbal. And I was like, I know it's selfish that I'm, you know, laying all this ground, but that's what I need today to not like have a really hard time. And it's like that. And then we had the best day ever, you know, and it could have been the worst day ever if I didn't understand like what I needed. And creating like a program, like the education for people to be able to harness that, like
It would just be you're creating these boundaries,
Yeah.
but also an understanding that these boundaries are going to have to shift and
Yeah.
dial things up and down, just depending on everything else that's going around as well. That's probably a really that's an important lesson that a lot of people could probably learn.
Yeah. And it's like a lot of the like treatment for neurodivergent stuff is like trying to like train you to be normal. And that's what I mean of it. It's like, hey, like let's look at this holistically and like how to be the best you can be. And I never got that. I had to find that myself, you know? And I feel like having that as a kid, I would have just like had a completely different life.
How would they even consider or assess what that normal is that they're trying to bring you to? You know, that, you know, like for example, in a classroom, right? When you said that you'll struggle in a classroom, there is a room of 20 something kids, diverse as fuck.
Yeah.
And there's one school program that sits somewhere in the middle that's meant to catch all of that and to make it work for those 25 kids. And then for you, you might be particularly like the outlier that's just on the tail end of that bell curve. So it's not going to work for you. This system's not going to work for you. But I wonder with the treatments that they have or whatever programs they have in place that's intended to bring them back to that middle part, how do they determine what that middle part is and what makes normal when there's just so much diversity out there that we're spread so broadly that how like what were they trying to bring you to? I guess that's my question. Is like instead of why would that be the default? Bring you to a different place to where you are of a normal that might not even really exist, rather than just saying that she has or this particular kid has this incredible way of thinking. What can we put in front of them that's going to amplify that and to make and just to allow them to flourish.
Exactly. It's like problem solving. It's making the most of a situation rather than trying to make the situation go away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like they were always like, you're making a choice to not listen, you know? Like it was kind of like I was deliberately going against the grain and like being an inconvenience. And I was like, I'm like 7. I don't even understand how I could like figure that out. Yeah, and instead of being like, oh, this kid's a problem or they're misbehaving, be like, why are they misbehaving?
And these are the questions that have been asked now, right? Like,
Yeah.
would you say that this, how we're assessing and how we're looking at this neurodivergency is through that lens?
I think it's getting there. It's so much better than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But I still feel like, you know, with COVID and stuff, and everyone...
That was set it off.
Yeah, like everyone getting glued on their phones, and attention spans, all that stuff, our brains just like completely shifted as a world. It wasn't just, you know, a couple people. It was everyone had this experience they took away from that psychologically and physically. And that created this like, but also as well as just having that attention span a bit different and like being locked inside, all that stuff. People also had time with themselves to like figure out who they were for the first time ever. So people, you know, that may have been in their 50s were like, whoa, I'm actually autistic.
Yeah.
You know, that's why all this happened. And like, I was in this generation that like didn't even know that was a thing, you know, and then everyone's like seeking treatment. And then the whole system is like, fuck all of y'all. Like, you're fine. Like, deal with it. And the system is just like so problematic right now. I think outwardly in schools and stuff, there's that better experience and people are more educated to help others. But the actual like mental health medical industry is really struggling. Like I got diagnosed when I was 16, and I've had to get re-diagnosed, I think 4 times now. It is like a genetic thing that you're born with.
Is it because they just keep on redefining and recategorizing?
I think they feel like I'm going to grow out of it. And I'm like, guys, do you even like understand what it is? It's this like reassessment every couple of years. And because a lot of the time the drugs that they give you are very intense, it's like methamphetamines. So, you know, it's a controlled drug.
Yeah, but it works the other way, right? Like it's used to dull you.
Yeah, like I had Ritalin before I got here, and like that's so I could drive here without being like, oh, pretty house, and then like crashing my car, you know? But yeah, I think we're getting there. I think as individuals, we're really growing, but I want to be a part of putting that extra work in.
Yeah, it's well, I was going to say it's fun. It's not funny, but it gets me thinking how for you it was, you know, not having identifying things with labels, and that was something that, you know, you've worked with, and just saying that there's no right, wrong, this or that. It's just what it is. But then at the same time, having labels and being able to identify and categorize conditions is also helpful for you to say that, okay, they've explored this part of neurodivergency, and they said that what they understand from this part where I fit in nicely is that I have these particular symptoms, and then these are the things that I can do to help me deal with that on a day-to-day. And I guess it's just a matter of then just thinking like, take what works and then just discard what doesn't, and just try to find your fit. But it's firstly just identifying it. That time when you were saying about COVID and you brought up social media, I'm wondering for you personally, with that overstimulation and how that can wreak havoc on you, how on earth are you going to handle social media as someone who has to have a presence and someone who you're on it well enough to promote yourself. How do you do it in a healthy way?
I'm such an iPad baby.
Yeah,
Like, oh
okay.
my
You're that
God.
generation.
I'm just scrolling. I think, I don't know. I always was like obsessed with social media and phones. I remember being a kid and like stealing all the parents' phones and being like, I want to like go on your Facebook and everything. Like it always just like, I love how it works. I'm fascinated by it. But it is such an overwhelming place. And especially now when it's just everyone's on it. Like it's not just, 20% of people, it's 100%.
Yeah.
And it's like if you're not on it, you're weird. I think it like comes in waves for me. There's times where I really enjoy it and there's times where it really overwhelms me and just being perceived. Like I think it was so easy for me in the beginning to have this online presence because I was like, no one's watching me. Like no one gives a shit. And then sometimes I remember like 6 months ago, I looked at like who had viewed my story and I was like, oh.
Thousands.
Oh. And like looking at the people and I'm like, that's a really important person. And I'm talking about like, there was this one time I went on a rant about like, I don't know, it was 3 a.m. and I was like, guys, I just want a pet raccoon so bad. Like they're just so cute. Like I'm going to go to Canada, I'm going to find one. Like I'm going to smuggle one back. And I'm just going in this whole rant. And then I went on another one about wanting a rat. I don't know. Like it's just... And then I looked at who viewed it and it's like all these important A&Rs and like label people and like, I'm just like, hey.
It's part of your brand. It's part of your brand.
I'm like, cool. Like, love that,
I find social media overwhelming,
Yeah.
and this is as someone who I can switch off from it quite easily, quite comfortably. I'll use it mostly just for work purposes, but there's a blurry line, right? Especially for you, because you need to maintain a presence, and as a musical artist, as a musician, there's a big part of it is putting your face to your work. Like, I mean, podcast aside, I speak with a lot of like visual artists, and a lot of visual artists, they can hide behind their work. They can they can put their work online, but they don't have to be front facing either. They can pour themselves into their work and then put their work online and then use that as the separator. I don't think musicians have that luxury. Not everyone can be Daft Punk or Gorillaz, that kind of style. Like you could that could be your thing, but for the most part, there is a direct connection, one-to-one, with you engaging with your fans and with your followers. So that in itself, like, how would you even then try to maintain that separation from you personally and trying to keep a healthy relationship? Are there rules or procedures you put in place to maintain a healthy relationship for you strictly?
I think that's something I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah.
Because I found recently I am defining myself by it. And with having the chronic illness and not being able to go out a lot these days, a lot of my interactions are via social media. And it's really hard to like kind of disconnect in that way when it's not only for my personal life, but it's also for my business. And, people having parasocial relationships with me, but then me also having parasocial relationships with others. And it's a whole thing to navigate that, like, I'm interested to see where I'm going to be 6 months from now, because I'm really starting to try and put in the work with that. But I do think, I did modeling when I was younger, and the whole social media aspect and just having photos of me was like horrible. I hated it. And I always think about how much more comfortable I am now that like I'm an artist first, that whatever I look like, whatever I'm dressed like, it's an expression of like my art and where I'm at. It doesn't have to be perfect. And because it's, musicianship right now and how to promote yourself as you're just an influencer, I think I'm always trying to think of that, of like, how am I being my most creative self? Like, I might look like a rat in that video, but like, I'm having fun, I'm giving charisma or whatever. My hair might not be brushed, but like I'm living, And I think that makes it easier for me. But it's a hard thing. I think every musician struggles with it because that's not what we came into this for.
Yeah, but it's just part of the package though, isn't it? It's just it's a necessary evil. So with your work, you mentioned earlier on that, and this is something that I found. Yeah, this is what I found with your work was it's hard to pigeonhole. There's a whole spectrum. Excuse that term.
Oh, it's fine. It's so fun.
There's a whole range that you bring into your work, and I love that there's been a breakdown in the genres and the categories, and that's something that seems to be becoming more and more prevalent in all facets of art and creativity because we're borrowing so much from everywhere that it's damn near impossible to say that this person fits in this particular category. There are no more categories, right? Like we still like to label things just so we can have a bit of an understanding. But with yours, there's an exploration into where you're going. So how would you like for people to understand what it is that you're creating? Like without trying to use any labels or trying to be genre specific, how is it best to understand what is the work that you're putting out?
I don't know. I think it's forever changing. That's why I feel like it's just r.em.edy, like it's always going to be me. It might be a different genre. It might be a different topic or vibe, but it's just like, it's always got to have like my soul in it. And I feel like that is what makes it cohesive and mine. Yeah.
Because I liked that the first, well, would you call it an album? The one that,
little EP.
The EP. I liked it.
Thanks.
Right. I liked that sound. I wasn't expecting that. Well, look, I don't know what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But it was a lot more. I was expecting something a bit more playful. It felt more thoughtful. The energy was not what I expected from it, and I gave it many listens because it was like I really dig this.
Thanks.
But then when I spoke to you about it, you didn't like it. You were actually thinking about taking that down.
Yeah, like the day before we quit out, I was like trying to go through my distributor to get it taken down, and then you said that you liked it, and I was like, that's so sweet.
So I'm the reason why it's still up.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I like when artists have their work up, and even though you can look back at it and just be like, that's not where I'm at now, but I think it's important just to keep those markers, just to show that progression and show that journey. And there are so many musicians that, how many times like have you found an album and this artist, you loved it, and you over time you kind of like just move away from them. They're evolving one way, you're growing in a different direction, and you just don't gel with them anymore. But I think that's why it's important just to have that whole discography and that whole timeline of things still there and accessible.
Yeah, I think it is super important. It's hard when I'm a perfectionist, but I do think it's nice to like see the growth not only through something like social media, but also through the music.
Has that been a problem?
Yes, it is. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, the EP I've been working on, I mean, even the song High as Hell in the Lobby, I've had it for like a year.
Jeez, okay.
And I've just been like, I'll listen to it like 30 times in a row and be like, what else does it need? Does it need something taken out? Da, da, da. And like, I've already spent, so long on it. I re-record every song like 3 times, and each one has like 70 layers of vocals, so it's a lot of work. But I think it's a song is so big and so important when you think about it, of how it was perceived like back in the 90s or something. Like that shit went on vinyls, went on CDs. It was everywhere. Like it had to be good. You couldn't just like take it off Spotify. So I think I'm always trying to like see how timeless I can make something, even if it's chasing a trend. I'm like, how can I make this stand up, in 10 years?
Well, that's one of the things that you can do now, right? You can just take your music off, or not even take it off. You could just update it to however you like. And then there's so many songs and albums that I've gone back to and listened to, and I'm like, this sounds different. They've remastered this, and like, I don't know if I necessarily like this more, but I know that they've tweaked it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's something that you can do now. But you are right. Like there's, back in the day when it had to be ready to be pressed, and once it's pressed, it's there forever. I'm trying to figure out with music, because you said a single is a big thing, and it is. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of refinement. And I'm trying to make a comparison with visual artists, because that's just how I think, right? Like there's a process, there's a lot of experimenting that you can go into creating visual artwork, right? There's like, you have your tools at your disposal and you can just fuck around with it, try to find the right technique. I guess it would just be similar to you just trying to find that vocal range, right? Well, tell me if this is right. It's easier to create some visual art piece, put it out there, and leaving it and just sharing it, and then getting on with the next one. Like, what would be the music equivalent of experimenting, sharing it, getting feedback, and then refining that process? Because if you're just going to do a single, would you don't want to show stages of that either, right? Like you want the launch of the single just to be the ultimate piece. How would you then go through the exploration and the trial and error?
I mean, I like sharing the journey like online and getting feedback and everything, but I feel like why it has to be so perfect as well is because you have to put so much money behind a song, and it's not just like I don't just finish the song and then it's putting it out. It's like then I have to like clean up all those stems, and that takes a lifetime. And then send it to get mixed, send it to get mastered, like do a photo shoot for the cover art, like shoot promo, like get all that done, pay the distributor, seek deals, send out press releases, so much stuff that it's like, if the song's shit, like, my God, like, because I've had that happen before where I'm like, I put more effort into the photo shoot than the song, and it just like absolutely backfires. So I think, I don't know. I think I'm figuring that out at the moment.
Yeah, I like the idea of experimenting, and this is what I was getting at with the whole perfectionism, is that I was definitely one person that was very fearful of sharing work publicly in fear of it not being well accepted, even though it doesn't matter. Like people that don't like your work, it shouldn't affect whether or not you create the work, right? Like you should be expecting people to not like the work. To that point, I don't even see it necessary for people to openly say they don't like someone's work. It's just not for you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I literally just thought I went on a date like last year, and then it was like the second date, so even worse. And then he was like, "Oh, I checked out your music," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And he was like, "Not for me." I was like, "Keep it to yourself, King."
Yeah.
It's so humbling. Sorry, I had to put that in.
Yeah, so the perfectionism, it gets in the way of creativity, right? Like I think that there needs to be an integral part of it is the experimentation, is the whole just doing things in anticipation of it not working out. And with music, this from what I see as an outside observer, you don't see enough of that experimenting stage, right? Like, I guess like when you see someone's journey, musical journey, it's this release, then that release, and then that release. But there's so much that's going on in between there that you don't ever get to see. Where like with visual arts, it's you can just fucking just put something out. You can just quickly mock something up, throw it out, another one, throw it out, and you can see all the little micro steps involved.
Yeah.
So it's just a way of breaking away from that perfectionism.
Yeah, I feel like those micro steps are social media for sure. You know, being like, oh, here's this like demo I did, or I just wrote the song tonight, and you're just doing like a little acoustic version of it, like.
And you're not afraid to put all that out.
Yeah, I love it. It's probably more fun than doing the whole song sometimes.
Yeah,
because it's experimenting. There's no like pressure. Yeah, but I don't know how else to do it at this point. I think just social media for me. Yeah.
So you this new single, you produced it yourself. The whole journey of being a producer.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like, what are the lessons that you have taken from that, and how is it different to the writing, the actual songwriting experience?
Ooh, I think writing. I started when I was 7, so I'm kind of comfortable with writing, but producing is still. I've been doing it for maybe 4 or 5 years, but I'm still like. I feel like a baby at it. It's something that when I try to do it, when I try to force myself, oh God, I make the worst thing you've ever heard. But when I just like let myself flow with it, I am super impressed with what I can create. And it's just a cool experience. It's just like a different approach to the song, like a different type of creativity. An understanding of like what goes into a song, and really helps me think, like study other songs. And I'm not just studying the vocals or like the lyrics. I'm like, okay, so they like used like this chord and like they mixed it this way. And I feel like that's definitely helped me write better songs and have more flexibility with how creative I can be. And I'm just like really excited that I got to produce again and like let myself do it, because I kind of shy away from it a lot. And it's like a really special song to me. There's a song I made a couple years ago called 613, and I produced that one as well. I could have used a co-producer on that one, but but I think that song, I was like, I don't just want to sing about the feeling. I want to like encapsulate the feeling through the chords production wise and make it feel like the feeling. Because a lot of songs do that to me. And so I felt like High as Hell is 613, but grown up, in that same approach. And I like was like, I want this to feel like unrequited love. I want it to feel like naive, like hope, you know, that like someone's got to pick you, but like, you know, they're not deep down. And I just feel like the chords pull at your heartstrings. And I don't like a lot of my music, but I listened to that song because I wrote it for like processing that situation.
Right. Was it done in tandem? Did you have the sound already in your head and you knew that these are the things I wanted to say? And was it something that you put together simultaneously, or was it just a process of working on one and then working on the other?
I think it was like a little bit of a broken up process for me, because I write a song differently like every time. I try not to like make myself stick to one format. And there's a Ariana Grande song called Better Off, and I have that on my crying playlist. I have a crying playlist. And I was listening to that a lot, and it just gave me that feeling of like I was like sinking into like what I was feeling. Like I felt like it was such a physical response, and I love songs that do that to me. So I was like, okay, like this song has nothing to do with what I'm going through. Like, let me look up the chords, and I just laid down like the same chord progression, and then started like manipulating like the piano and like all this stuff, and then created this song that gave me that same feeling. And then I just like, this song's about being high as hell, but then I got high as hell. And then I just like didn't have the patience to like sit down and write about it. And I was like, I'm just gonna freestyle. And the whole song was pretty much this like freestyle I comped together, and I retracked later. And looking back at the lyrics, some of them are like simplistic, and it's like I'm asking like, what is the point of you? Like, is it true that I never did matter? Tell me that I matter. And I was just like speaking from my heart in this, subconscious little high as hell way. But if I had to sit down and like write that song and be super like, ooh, like metaphors and this, I would have never asked any question. I would have just made this like poetic metaphor that like people probably couldn't even like intellectualize to relate to. And that makes the song so much better because it's like a letter to the person. Yeah.
I listen to music a lot to get me in particular frame of minds for whatever it is that I'm doing, right? So I love I love how you were saying that you first created the production of it to then make you feel a certain way, and then the words came out after that. And you are right, it is interesting because then it just got you thinking about asking questions rather than necessarily stating matter of fact. It was just what you were thinking and what you were feeling at the time, and it was raw, and it just gelled into this one piece.
Yeah. It's just, I just love it. It's so, I hope other people like it. But it's my little baby, Because all my songs, I'm like thinking about it in a business way. And this song was just for me. Yeah.
That has to be the best way to go about creating music, right? Because we connect with it on such a deep emotional level. And sure, there's pop music which is there. Just, I don't know, what would it be? It would just be like audio pornography, right? It's just for us just to be like feel a certain emotion, like endorphins, but not feel anything. So there is that type of music which has its role in our culture. But when you're talking about music that we connect with, I think that's something that has to come from not trying to cater to anyone in particular other than just for you, specifically for you. And people will resonate with it. I don't think there's going to be any shortage of that. I think probably even more so because they are able to connect with that emotional authenticity.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of consideration, or I don't want to call it fear, but definitely do you think about building a fan base and having that shift as you develop as well? Like having the people that are supporting you now, because as you were saying, like, from the business side of things, you want to provide something for your fans, but at the same time, you don't want to just cater to them strictly. So is that something that you're ever mindful of when you're creating your work?
I think they've kind of given me this, without saying, this space to just like be me. So I feel like I ever feel trapped by them. I feel like, if they don't like something, they'll be like, yeah, but it's r.em. So like she'll do what I want like later.
You'll
Like
come back around at some point.
yeah, like I've already done so many different sounds, and people will be like, oh, I like this sound from you, and I'm like, cool, like then you can listen to that song, and then like this other person can listen to this one, because it's it's, if I'm putting other, like, the society and their perception of me before me when I create, it is not only going to hurt me, but I'm not going to create good stuff. Like I'm going to create something that people would have heard before.
And you're challenging their ideals as well. If they're listening to your flavor and your flavor is constantly evolving or shifting or just not in any kind of solid state. It's just morphing and bringing in different ingredients along the way. You're also then exposing them to different sounds. It's almost like, when Post Malone first came out and no one had any idea what to do about it, right? Like he was just, they're like categorized as hip hop. Was like, that's not at all hip hop. Hip hop ish, mostly, largely like bluegrass, even, and we just didn't even know what to say or what to do about it. But then, even listening to him, I was like, fuck, you know what? I kind of like country music.
Yeah.
I didn't think I would say that, but like, I like his country music.
Exactly. And it's like being like genre fluid. Yeah. Sorry, I keep messing that up in interviews and I keep saying that I'm gender fluid and like love that. Like all for it. I'm not. I'm she, her. And I feel bad because I keep saying that on stage and stuff because I'm dyslexic, but like whatever. Anyway.
Tangent.
But like really meshing genres together and challenging myself, to listen to a genre I wouldn't listen to and then subconsciously get influenced by it. And then, I feel like there's always this home base that artists come to. Mine is like the R&B soul kind of jazz stuff. And then that is like the undertone, but I might go do something country and then they've got to mesh together and then I might do rock and then it's meshed together and like that's the fun with it. I feel like it just allows me to like keep exploring in a healthy way for my business as well because I'm not completely going rock. I want to, I just can't vocally. But yeah, it's fun and it keeps like the creativity and spirit alive for me.
And that just has to be the way. It has to be the way. Like I would even, actually that was the basis of this podcast, was to reach out to very different people to me. I've always been one person that has been set in my ways too much and it was not serving me well. So it was a conscious decision to be like, I've got to start exploring and looking outside of this tiny box that's trapped me. And I love hearing from artists that do that intentionally for no other reason other than just to get inspired by other things that are outside of their wheelhouse and just to see if it works. It might not. You might just hear something and be like, that's just not for me. But it's now plugged in there somewhere and it might come out at a later stage. Who knows? When something else that you've learned along the way and they just connect and like, oh my God, there's country music now.
Yeah. And like country is honestly so underrated. I just gotta say.
Look, you know what? It has to be because the following and the listener base of country music is bonkers. And I'm not shitting on it. I'm just not familiar. I'm just not familiar with it. It's not.
Yeah, well, I mean, like even growing up, I was like, because we have this like stereotypical perception of country music, but like there's so much undertone of country even in like pop music.
Okay.
And like the songwriting structure and like the storytelling, like
right.
Country coming from blues, like everything. I feel like if more people that hate country just like do a little soul searching.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think that if you peel back the layers of all the different genres, you're going to start seeing a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Right? Like, when you said storytelling, and I know that country music's big on storytelling, that if you were then to look at all the undertones, and you'll see that these genres actually aren't all too different. It's just that top layer of the sound that ultimately is different. It's always like, the cream rises to the top. So at the top level, they're all, excuse the pun, singing the same song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So by the time this episode comes out, your single would have just dropped and you're going on this big campaign to promote it. You were saying earlier that you're doing things in reverse.
Yeah.
What is the standard way of doing it, and why have you chosen to go the opposite?
I think I'm just trying something new, honestly. I think I'll be doing the same format which a lot of artists do, especially underground artists, where we tease a song for months, for weeks. We post all of our content before the song comes out. The day the song comes out, we post like the music video or something, and then you never hear from us again about the song because we don't have any more content left. We use it all. And I'm like, well, you know. So I was like, okay, what if I flip it on its head and I do like a couple days leading up, I'm like teasing it and, announcing it. Drop the song almost as like a DSP only release without like any promo or anything. And then for the next couple of months, do all my rolling out then and be super creative with what kind of content I create, potentially have different like sides of the song that I can do for a month or like interviews like this and stuff, and have the song available for people because so much of the time I'm on TikTok and people are teasing the song and they're doing it for months and the song is still not out. And I'm like, you would have gotten so many streams now.
Yeah,
but
true.
like now everyone's sick of your shit.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, okay, let's like change it up. And like, I've really been wanting to take on TikTok a bit more seriously and stuff. So I was like, that's a cool opportunity to do that with this song. And I think also with the song, I really want to have conversations about relationships, situationships, being neurodivergent and how we love, how we react to love, because it's different. And I never understood it. I just thought that I was a little crazy girl. But it's just how my brain works.
They're not mutually exclusive though.
Exactly. And I was like, oh, I always like, have like limerence, or I'm just like have this crazy ideal of a person, or get obsessive, and then the week later I can't even remember their name and everything. And it's like, yeah, like that's probably ADHD. I'm getting obsessed with the dopamine and being like, I love this, and then leaving. And then also, toxic relationships, abusive stuff, heavily tied back to ADHD and fight or flight and dopamine addiction and stuff. So wanting to have conversations about that as well.
It really opens up all of that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The music industry has changed so much since streaming. So you're releasing a single. Is there consideration for how that single would fit into an album?
Oh, yeah, the album's done.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's going to be drip fed along the way. Because I know that like is albums still something that a lot of artists aspire to want to create, musical artists aspire to create? Because I feel as though that the appreciation for an album, the streaming platform doesn't cater to that.
It doesn't. I feel like if an artist does it, it's for them.
Yeah.
Like unless you're Lady Gaga, like a lot of the time they're like, there's no point doing an album because no one's going to listen to it, or it's not going to receive the same kind of attention it could if it was a single. But I'm kind of like, I love creating since I'm so into doing different sounds, I'm like, I want to create a world through an EP or an album. And if people want to be in that world, be in that genre, they can just click on that album. They don't have to like sift through my songs and figure it out themselves. Like what consumer wants to do that? So with this one, I was like, I really want to, look into my like SZA influence and Doja Cat and my R&B, and work on my runs and all that kind of stuff, and situationship core. And yeah, that's what this album's all about. And it's really for me, that world, that piece of my life. But I feel like, I think it's making a comeback after this whole single kind of era that we've been doing for such a long time now.
I believe so. I think there's a lot of the more traditional methods of doing things. They they often rear back in as a counter to how things have come around. Like records are now being sold in massive amounts, right? Like it's the numbers are ridiculous these days, and same with books. No, I think that streaming came at a time where it was reactive to how things were, right? Like I think it was just the evolution from CDs. The natural progression was in MP3s. MP3s came illegal downloads, and then streaming said we can help bridge that. Like, cool, that's fine. It was an evolution that we didn't ask for, that the market didn't really anticipate. It was just how things evolved. But then a lot of, I guess, like more purists would have been like, actually, we fucking want albums. We want to have that. We want something tangible, something to
Physical.
hold, something
Yeah.
physical. I miss going into places like Sanity. I went into Sanity a lot.
was the
Yeah,
Sanity was fire though. My mom would like
Mm.
lose me at the shopping center as a kid, and I'd just be there with like
The headphones, just,
on,
yeah.
listening to So Fresh.
yeah. Compilations, man.
So
They were
good.
good. They were good. Yeah, so just having something tactile, having something to hold, and even like with books, like it just came about. It's like Kindle's great, but then I think what the people are missing is that they want to have that collection. They want to have something just to have that connection back. Like a book on the shelf, it's like almost like a trophy. It's like, I read that.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to be able to just see it always. I want to be able to go back to it and just take it off the shelf and hold it again. And that's the same with music. I think people want something to have that connection to that's just not, in the cloud.
Yeah.
So then with that comes the album, and I know I'm a sucker for an album. I like when someone recommends music, I will go to the album and play it start to finish, not on random.
In order?
It has to be.
You're the best.
Has to be,
You're the best.
right? Like how could you? Because sometimes they're mixed that way.
Yeah, they are.
Right? And then
Yeah.
if you're not listening to an order, and it doesn't feel right. It's like watching a movie, but like halfway through before you watch the start. It's like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Exactly.
I'm digging. I like your sound. I really do like your sound. I like how it wasn't what I expected, and every time I see you put something out there, sharing some content of your music, it is a bit different to what the last thing was. I'm interested to see what comes off this album. The single, that little clip that you shared, there was a lot of emotion behind it.
Thanks.
I'm interested to see the video that's been made for it, because I also know that that's something that's not really given enough attention anymore as well. Like there's not much that's invested into creating music videos, but I think that I grew up at a time when there was like rage was a big deal, right? Love rage, right? Like that was, music videos was a big deal. So I'm a sucker for like watching a well-made music video that showcases the song in the best light. So I love that you've kind of done things in a very traditional way and trying to create that for a very non-traditional space and breaking all the rules with how things are done. Not necessarily something that you were consciously thinking or doing. It was just for you. It was just like, I'm just going to do it this way.
Music videos is so important to me. I used to do a little bit of videography in my spare time when I was younger, and I just do that for fun. So I'm always, when I'm writing a song, I'm writing it based on like a visual idea that I had.
So you are a very visual person as well.
Oh yeah.
All right, cool.
But so expensive. They're so expensive. And I've like done a couple of them before, and with like everything, and as being an artist, there's no revenue from the money that you spend, like the products. So I've been really spending all that money for 5 years now, and now I'm like, yeah, I'm broke. Yeah. So I was like, how do I navigate creating this world of like the best music I've made with no money? Um, so those little like videos of me in like the city and stuff with my glowing heart. I was originally supposed to be the cover art for the album, but I was like, I think this is I just have to put this into High as Hell for that song because it really just needs that, and that's what that picture was about, and that's like the world I saw when I was creating that song. And so I like begged the photographer to like film like a little performance shot of me like when we were wrapping up. And I was like, all right, let me see like how I can manipulate that footage. And then all throughout like the Ely tour I did over the summer, I was just like filming myself in every hotel room, like singing the song. And I've just kind of like compiled all of those videos together of all these different eras of me like experiencing, that song, and what I was going through, all those growing pains in dating and relationships over the span of like 6 months. And it's just this beautiful kind of time capsule of like who I am at the moment, and who I've been recently. And it's just, it's cute. It's like low budget. It's like, there's nothing that cute about it, but like cinematically. But I just thought it was it connected with the song because the song was about being vulnerable and about it just being for me. And it was almost like this little video diary of like me just, talking about that song, which was really sweet. Yeah.
Now that you've given it that context, I totally get it as well. It was just expression, right? It was just you expressing, feeling, and then expressing. I get it. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear it.
Thanks. Yeah. I can't wait. Couldn't come soon enough. Yeah, and I hope the person it's about likes it.
Jeez.
Yeah. I was like, I think that's one reason why I was so hesitant to put it out, because I was like, oh, it's so obvious.
Okay.
I was like, shit.
All right. Well.
So, yeah. Hopefully they're not the confrontational type.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's one way of communicating.
Yeah. I've always been like, I won't say how I feel to like the person normally, but I'll like write a song and put it out and be like,
here's 12 months worth of work and a lot of money for me to express what it is that I can't say to you.
Yeah. I mean, even when I think I was 19, I just started like experimenting, putting music out. Definitely back then I was experimenting a lot more, just making a demo and putting it on Spotify that day. Weird time. And this guy that I was like, I didn't even know if I was seeing him, but it was something. And he like asked like, what is this? Like, what's going on and everything. And I just like sent him a song because I was like, I can't like type it, but I'll sing it for you. And he was like,
message
this
loud and
is
clear.
so weird. So it's always, it's my little letter to people.
Awesome.
For sure. Yeah.
Ren, thanks for this conversation.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.